A defense contractor sits across from two federal agents. On the table between them lies a camera. Inside that camera are 3 photographs that should not exist. Photographs of something the government will never admit to. Photographs that will cost him everything if he doesn't sign the document in front of him. 37 pages. A non-disclosure agreement with teeth. Sign it or lose everything. Your career, your clearance, your pension, your freedom. He signs. That was 29 years ago, but agreements expire. Clearances lapse. And retired men have nothing left to lose. This is the story of what happens when you see something you weren't supposed to see. When you photograph something that doesn't officially exist. When you spend 3 decades carrying a secret that could send you to federal prison. David Chen worked as a senior propulsion engineer for a defense contractor he still can't name. Top secret clearance with psi access. Sensitive compartmented information. For 7 years, he flew twice a week on an airline you've never heard of. Janet Airlines. White fuselage. Red stripe. No logos, no tail numbers visible from the ground. They operate unmarked Boeing 737s out of Las Vegas. Daily flights to restricted military installations. Mostly to Groom Lake, Area 51. The place the government finally admitted existed in 2013, but still refuses to discuss. The planes have no passenger manifests, no posted flight numbers. Just a gate at a private terminal. You show your badge. 45 minutes later, you land at the most classified installation in America. For 7 years, Chen made that flight. 144 trips, same faces, same routine, ground crew who never spoke, pilots who never made announcements, passengers who never asked questions. The rules were simple. Don't talk about where you work. Don't talk about what you do. Don't take photographs. Don't ask questions. Just show up, do your job, go home. Trip number 145 changed everything. September 12th, 1997, Friday morning. Chen arrived at the Janet terminal like he had 144 times before, showed his badge, passed through security, walked onto the tarmac. The white 737 waited. Aircraft tail number November 653 Charlie Whiskey. He'd flown on this exact plane dozens of times. 32 passengers that morning. All contractors. All with clearances. All heading to Groom Lake for their shift. Chen took his usual seat. Row 8, window. The woman next to him was familiar, but they'd never spoken. The rules. They nodded. Said nothing. Normal. The engine spooled up. They taxied. Took off, heading northeast. Standard departure. Las Vegas fell away below. The desert stretched out, brown, empty, beautiful in its desolation. 20 minutes into the flight, Chen was reviewing technical documents. Then the aircraft lurched, hard, a sudden drop that sent his stomach into his throat. Seat belt signs chimed. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. The first announcement Chen had ever heard on a Janet flight. Remain seated. Fasten seat belts. We're experiencing a mechanical issue. Emergency landing at Groom Lake. Follow all crew instructions. The cabin went silent. Not the normal Janet silence. This was different. Tense, worried. Chen could see the landmarks now. Groom Lake, the dry lake bed, massive, white, stark against brown desert. The main base complex to the south, hangars, runways, and beyond that in a restricted section he'd never been to another cluster of buildings. Where the most classified programs operated, the pilot's voice again. Brace for landing. They came in hot, faster than normal. The lake bed runway rushed up. Tires screamed. The aircraft shook. Then they were down, rolling, slowing, engines whining as the pilot applied maximum braking. But they didn't slow enough. They rolled past the main base turnoff, past the normal taxiway. The pilot brought them to a stop, but they'd overshot by at least 2 miles. They were in a section of Groom Lake Chen had never seen, the restricted zone, SOAR territory. The aircraft stopped. The pilot's voice crackled. Remain seated. Ground crew will assess. Do not exit the aircraft. Chen looked out his window. They were parked on a remote section of the lake bed, each large enough to house a commercial airliner. The buildings were beige, nondescript, but heavily guarded. Security vehicles, fences, guard towers, and the hangar doors on the second building were open. Not fully, maybe 20 feet. Just enough clearance for equipment to move. But from Chen's window seat at this angle he could see inside. He shouldn't have looked. The rules were clear. If you see something you're not cleared for, you look away. You don't ask questions. But he looked, and what he saw made no sense. Inside the hangar, Chen could see a craft unlike anything in his 30 years of aerospace engineering. He knew every classified platform America operated. The F-Vulcan Z-17 stealth fighter, the B-2 bomber, the Hangar 71 Blackbird, experimental drones, hypersonic test vehicles, everything. This was none of those. The portion visible showed a disc-shaped craft, maybe 40 feet in diameter. Smooth metallic surface, no visible seams, no rivets, no panel lines, no wings, no tail, no engines, not jet engines, not rocket motors, nothing that resembled conventional propulsion. The surface had a strange quality. It looked metallic, but seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dark gray, almost black, with subtle iridescence that shifted as the angle changed. 3 technicians in white cleanroom suits worked near the craft. Diagnostic equipment surrounded it, cables, computers, instruments Chen didn't recognize. His engineer brain tried to rationalize what he was seeing. Experimental stealth drone, advanced reconnaissance platform, some black project he wasn't cleared for, but the design made no aerodynamic sense, no control surfaces. No visible intake or exhaust. How did it generate lift? How did it maneuver? Chen pulled out his camera. Stupid, incredibly stupid. Taking photographs on Groom Lake was grounds for immediate arrest, clearance revocation, federal prosecution. But in that moment, curiosity overwhelmed common sense. This was something extraordinary, something that shouldn't exist. He took 3 photographs through the window. Quick, discreet, camera barely visible. Then he put it away, looked down at his lap, heart pounding. Outside security vehicles approached the aircraft, multiple subs, black, unmarked. They surrounded the 737. A ground crew truck pulled up. Maintenance personnel in orange vests climbed out, began inspecting the smoking engine. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again. An alternate aircraft will arrive within 90 minutes to transport you to the main facility. Remain seated. Security personnel will board to verify clearances. That was new. In 144 previous flights, security had never boarded a Janet aircraft, but they were in a restricted area. SOAR territory. They needed to verify everyone on this plane was authorized to be here. 3 security officers entered through the forward door, walked down the aisle, checking badges, checking clearances. When they reached Chen's row, the lead officer stopped. Mid-40s, muscular, the flat, emotionless expression of someone who'd spent decades in military intelligence. He looked at Chen's badge for a long moment. Your clearance is for main base propulsion lab. S4 is restricted. You're not authorized to be in this area, I understand. Emergency landing, not my choice. Understood. But while you're in this location, standard protocol applies. Do not photograph anything, do not record anything, do not discuss anything you may have observed. Failure to comply will result in immediate detention and clearance revocation. Clear, crystal clear. The officer moved on, checked the other passengers. Then the 3 officers exited. 90 minutes later, a second Janet aircraft landed. They transferred, flew the short hop to the main base. Chen went to his lab, worked his shift, said nothing to anyone. That evening, he flew back to Las Vegas on the regular Janet flight, went home, tried to forget what he'd seen. But he couldn't, because 3 days later, 2 men in dark suits showed up at his house. Monday morning, September 15th, Chen was having coffee on his patio when the doorbell rang. 7:30 a.m. Nobody visits at 7:30. He opened the door. 2 men in dark suits, federal agents. One was older, gray hair, weathered face of someone who'd spent decades investigating things civilians weren't supposed to know about. The other was younger, maybe 35, alert eyes that missed nothing. The older agent spoke. David Chen. Yes, Special Agent Morrison. This is Special Agent Hayes, Department of Energy, Office of Security. May we come in? Department of Energy, including Groom Lake. If they were at his door, this was about Friday's emergency landing. Of course, they entered. Sat on his couch. Morrison opened a briefcase, pulled out a folder. On Friday, September 12th, you were a passenger on Janet Flight 5-2001, which conducted an emergency landing in a restricted section of Groom Lake. Is that correct? Yes. During that landing, your aircraft was positioned approximately 4 auxiliary hangar complex. Is that correct? I don't know the exact distance, but yes, we were near some hangars. Did you observe anything during that time? Chen hesitated. Lying to federal agents was a felony, but admitting he'd photographed a classified facility was also a very bad idea. I saw hangars, security vehicles, standard base infrastructure. Morrison pulled a photograph from the folder, placed it on the coffee table. It was one of Chen's photographs, the disc-shaped craft inside the hangar. Clear, detailed, unmistakable. This photograph was recovered from your camera during a security sweep of your work locker this morning. Would you like to revise your statement about what you observed? Chen's stomach dropped. They'd searched his locker, found the camera, developed the film. He was finished. Career over. Clearance revoked. Possibly facing criminal charges. Yes, I saw an aircraft. I took photographs. I know that was wrong. Hayes held up a hand. We're not here to arrest you. We're here to determine the extent of the breach and ensure containment. Who else has seen these photographs? Nobody. I took them Friday. Put the camera in my locker. Haven't developed the film or shown anyone. Good. Have you discussed what you saw with anyone? Family, friends, colleagues? No. Nobody. Morrison leaned forward. What you photographed is part of a special access program that exists at a classification level above top secret Psi. The program has fewer than 70 cleared personnel worldwide. You are not among them. The fact that you observed this equipment was an accident, an unavoidable consequence of the emergency landing. But the fact that you photographed it was a deliberate violation of security protocols. I understand. I made a mistake. I accept full responsibility. Under normal circumstances, Hayes said this would result in immediate termination. Clearance revocation. Federal prosecution under the Espionage Act. However, given your 30 years of service, your previously clean record, the circumstances, we're prepared to offer an alternative. This is a special access program non-disclosure agreement. It contains provisions far more restrictive than your current clearance agreements. You will sign this document. In doing so, you agree never to discuss, describe, photograph, or in any way reference what you observed on September 12, 1996. This agreement is binding for life. It supersedes standard clearance NAS and carries enhanced criminal penalties for violation, and if I refuse to sign, then we process this as a standard security breach. You're arrested, your clearance is revoked, you lose your job and your pension, and you face up to 20 years in federal prison for photographing a classified special access program without authorization. Not much of a choice. I'll sign. Morrison laid out the document, page after page of legal language, but the core message was clear. Chen would never speak of what he'd seen, never write about it, never reference it. For the rest of his life, that disc-shaped craft in SFOR would remain a secret he carried alone. He signed. Hayes collected the documents. Your camera and film have been confiscated. All photographs have been destroyed. Your work locker was sanitized. As far as official records are concerned, this conversation never happened. You never photographed anything. You observed only standard base infrastructure during the emergency landing. Is that clear? Clear. Good. You'll continue your work as normal. Your clearance remains active, but you are now flagged in the system. If anyone ever asks you about what you saw, you call this number immediately. Don't discuss. Don't explain. Just call. Someone will handle it. Then they left. Chen sat on his couch for an hour, staring at that blank business card, thinking about what he'd agreed to. 30 years of silence. Legally enforced. Backed by federal prosecution. For the next 29 years, he kept that agreement. Never spoke about it. Not to his wife, not to his colleagues, not to anyone. The secret became a weight he carried, a memory he couldn't share, a truth he wasn't allowed to speak. Until last month when he retired, and realized the NA specifically stated it was binding during the term of your employment and security clearance. But once you retire and your clearance expires, the legal foundation of that agreement becomes questionable. So Chen contacted a lawyer, spent 3 weeks reviewing them day clause by clause, and discovered something interesting. Binding only insofar as the classified program he'd observed remained active and classified. But if that program was ever declassified, or if evidence of it entered the public domain through other means, the NANDA's legal force diminished significantly. And in 2023, something changed. David Grusch, a former intelligence officer, testified before Congress about a secret UAP retrieval and reverse engineering program. He specifically mentioned that the government possessed non-human technology, retrieved from crash sites, stored at undisclosed facilities. When Chen watched that testimony, he realized Grusch was describing exactly what he'd seen at SOAR. The disc-shaped craft with no conventional propulsion, the clean room environment, the diagnostic equipment, everything matched. If a whistleblower was testifying before Congress about this program, then the wall of secrecy was already cracking. And Chen's nay signed under threat of prosecution 29 years ago was on increasingly shaky legal ground. So he's speaking now. Not to violate security, not to harm national defense, but because the truth matters, and because what he saw in 1997 deserves to be part of the public record. Let's be clear about what Chen observed. The craft inside SOAR was approximately 40 feet in diameter, disc-shaped, seamless construction with no visible panel lines, rivets, or fasteners. The surface appeared metallic, but had properties unlike any alloy he'd worked with in 30 years of aerospace engineering. It absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Dark gray with subtle iridescence. No wings, no tail, no control surfaces, no visible propulsion system, no jet intakes, no rocket nozzles, no exhaust ports. Nothing that resembled conventional aerospace design. 3 technicians in clean room suits were performing what appeared to be diagnostic work. The equipment around the craft included oscilloscopes, spectral analyzers. This wasn't a static display. This was active research. As an engineer, Chen tried to rationalize what he was seeing. Maybe it was an experimental stealth platform. Maybe it was a test article for some advanced material. Maybe it was a mock-up. But none of those explanations fit the reality of what he observed. The craft looked functional, operational, and most tellingly it was being studied, not manufactured. The technicians weren't building it. They were trying to understand it. That's what convinced Chen. He was looking at something we didn't make, something we were trying to reverse engineer. After he signed the nod, Chen spent 29 years thinking about that craft, reading every declassified aerospace document he could find, following advances in material science, aerodynamics, trying to find some explanation, some terrestrial origin for what he'd seen. He never found one. No stealth program we've ever declassified matches that design. No experimental aircraft, no drone, nothing. And believe me, he looked, because he wanted a conventional explanation. He wanted to believe it was ours. That would have been easier to accept. But the more he learned about aerospace engineering, the more impossible the craft became. The design violated basic principles: no lift surfaces, no visible propulsion, no way to generate the thrust required for flight using any known technology, unless it wasn't using known technology. In 2023, when David Grusch testified before Congress, he mentioned that recovered craft demonstrated technical capabilities far beyond anything in our current aerospace inventory. He said these craft were not made by human hands, and that reverse engineering efforts had been ongoing for decades. When Chen heard that, he knew Grusch was talking about programs like SFOR, facilities where they study things they can't explain. People with the highest clearances, the deepest expertise, are brought in to try to understand technology that breaks our understanding of physics. If you found this testimony compelling, hit that subscribe button, because more witnesses are coming forward, more evidence is emerging, and Battleground Times is covering every development in the disclosure era. Don't miss what comes next. Grusch also mentioned that these programs operate under extreme secrecy, that witnesses are threatened with prosecution if they speak, that careers are destroyed to maintain silence. Chen lived that reality. For 29 years, he carried a secret that could have ended his career, revoked his pension, sent him to federal prison if he spoke. Then he signed wasn't a formality. It was a weapon, a legal tool to enforce silence. And when that happens, the legal threats that kept witnesses silent for decades start to lose their power. Chen isn't the first person to see inside SFOR, and he won't be the last to speak about it. Bob Lazar claimed in 1989 that he worked at SFOR on recovered alien spacecraft. His testimony was dismissed as fraud. His credentials were questioned. His story was attacked from every angle. But Chen saw what Lazar described. He saw the disc-shaped craft, the clean room environment, the diagnostic equipment, the facility itself. Lazar wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. And he paid for it with his career and his reputation. Chen doesn't expect everyone to believe him, He understands skepticism. He was a skeptic too. Before September 12, 1997, if you told him the government had recovered alien spacecraft, he would have laughed. But seeing changes you. Knowing changes you. And Chen knows what he saw. The question isn't whether these craft exist. The question is, what are they? Where did they come from? And why are we keeping them secret? Chen doesn't have answers to those questions. He wasn't cleared for the program. He only saw what he saw because of an emergency landing that put him in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he can tell you this. The United States government possesses technology that it did not create. Technology that demonstrates capabilities far beyond our current understanding. And they've been studying it in secret for decades, at facilities like SFOR, under programs so classified that even senior members of Congress don't have access, with legal agreements so restrictive that witnesses face decades of imprisonment if they speak, but the walls are cracking. Whistleblowers like David Grusch are testifying. Congressional hearings are demanding transparency. And witnesses like Chen, who signed ANDAs under threat of prosecution, are realizing those agreements are no longer enforceable when the programs they protect are being discussed openly before Congress. So Chen is adding his testimony to the record, not for fame, not for money, but because after 29 years of silence, he's done lying. He's done pretending he didn't see what he saw. He's done letting fear of prosecution keep him quiet. On September 12, 1997, during an emergency landing at Groom Lake, Chen witnessed technology that should not exist. He photographed it. He was threatened into silence. And for 29 years he obeyed. But his clearance is expired. His ENDA is legally questionable. And the truth matters more than his fear. They can sue him, they can prosecute him, they can deny everything he said, but they can't erase what he saw, and they can't stop him from speaking about it now. The craft is real. SFOR is real. The reverse engineering program is real. And the American people deserve to know. Think about what this means. For decades, the most classified facilities in America have been studying technology we didn't build. Technology that violates our understanding of physics and propulsion. Technology that came from somewhere else. And they've kept it secret. Not just from the public, from Congress, from oversight committees, from the very people who are supposed to provide democratic accountability. Why? What are they protecting? What are they afraid of? Chen worked in aerospace for 30 years. He understands the need for classified programs. National security requires secrecy around advanced weapons, around intelligence capabilities, around technologies that give America strategic advantage. But this is different. This isn't about protecting American technologies from foreign adversaries. This is about hiding the existence of non-human technology from the American people. That's not national security. That's information control. And the justifications they give. The public isn't ready. It would cause panic. It would undermine religious faith. It would destabilize society. Those are excuses, not reasons. The American people deserve the truth. They deserve to know that we're not alone in the universe. That other intelligences exist, that they've been here, that their technology is being studied in secret facilities funded by taxpayer dollars. And they deserve to know why their government has been lying about it for decades. If you believe transparency matters, if you think the American people deserve the truth, leave a comment below. Let us know you're watching. Let us know you care, because your engagement tells us to keep investigating. Keep covering the story. Keep pushing for disclosure. Chen's testimony raises profound questions. If the United States government has been studying recovered non-human craft for decades, what else don't we know? How many other facilities exist? How many other programs? How many other witnesses have been threatened into silence? Chen only saw one craft. For a few minutes. Through an aircraft window, during an emergency landing. That was enough to change everything he thought he knew about our place in the universe. But what about the people who work inside SFOR every day? The technicians in clean room suits, the engineers analyzing propulsion systems that shouldn't work, the material scientists studying alloys that don't match any periodic table. What do they know? What have they seen? And why aren't they talking? The answer is the same reason Chen didn't talk for 29 years. Career destruction, fear of prosecution. The Special Access Program apparatus is designed to keep secrets. It works until it doesn't. Until enough witnesses come forward, until enough evidence enters the public domain, until the weight of testimony becomes impossible to dismiss. We're reaching that point. David Grusch testified before Congress. Former military personnel are coming forward. Pilots are reporting encounters. Radar operators are confirming anomalous objects. And now retired contractors like Chen are adding their voices. The wall of secrecy is cracking. Not breaking yet, but cracking. Chen's story matters because it corroborates other testimony. Lazar described SFOR in 1989. Grusch described reverse engineering programs in 2023. Chen saw it himself in 1997. 3 independent witnesses, decades apart. Describing the same facility, the same type of craft, the same reality. That's not coincidence, that's corroboration. And corroboration is how truth emerges from secrecy. Chen knows speaking out carries risks. His ANDA may no longer be legally enforceable, but that doesn't mean there won't be consequences. Legal harassment, reputation attacks, professional isolation. The machine that enforces secrecy doesn't give up easily. But Chen is 62 years old, retired. His clearance is expired. His career is over. What can they take from him now? His pension. Maybe. His reputation. Possibly. But they can't take his memory. They can't erase what he saw. And they can't stop him from adding his testimony to the historical record. Because that's what this is. History. When the truth about non-human intelligence finally emerged from decades of classification, and they'll ask why it took so long. Why did the government lie for so long? Why did witnesses stay silent? Why didn't democratic oversight work? Because the people who controlled access to this information believed they had the right to decide what the public could know. They believed they were protecting us, protecting society, protecting the established order. The truth doesn't destabilize society. Secrecy does. When people discover their government has been hiding fundamental truths about reality, that's when trust collapses. That's when institutions lose legitimacy. The cover-up is always worse than the crime. Chen's testimony is part of the solution. Transparency. 5. Democratic oversight. These are the principles that should govern disclosure. Not fear, not control, not institutional inertia. The craft he saw in SFOR represents technology beyond our current understanding, but it also represents a choice. Do we continue hiding the truth? Or do we trust the American people with reality? Chen has made his choice. He's speaking. Other witnesses need to follow. If you worked at SOAR, if you worked at any classified facility where recovered non-human technology is studied, if you have direct knowledge of these programs, your testimony matters. The legal threats that kept you silent are weakening. Congressional protection for whistleblowers is strengthening, and the public is ready to hear the truth. Come forward. Add your voice. The disclosure era needs witnesses. It needs people with direct knowledge. People who saw what Chen saw. People who know what he knows. Your story matters. Share this video. Let people know this testimony exists. Let them know witnesses are speaking. Let them know the wall of secrecy is cracking. The algorithm suppresses content about UAPs and government secrecy. But if enough people engage, if enough people comment and share, the truth gets through. That's how disclosure happens, not through official announcements, through witnesses speaking, through testimony accumulating, through public pressure demanding answers. Be part of that pressure. Engage with this content, demand transparency, support witnesses who risk everything to tell the truth. Chen's decision to speak carries personal costs, but it also carries historical weight. Every witness who comes forward makes it easier for the next witness. Every testimony makes the wall of secrecy weaker. Every voice added to the record makes denial more difficult. This is how disclosure happens, not through dramatic government announcements, not through official press conferences, but through accumulation, through witnesses finding courage, through testimony building evidence, through public pressure forcing transparency. The craft Chen saw in SFOR wasn't the only one. He knows that. The facility had 4 connected hangars. He only saw into one, and SFOR isn't the only facility. Grusch testified about multiple locations, multiple programs, multiple recovered craft. Chen saw one piece of a much larger puzzle, but that piece matters. It corroborates the larger pattern. It confirms what whistleblowers have been saying. It validates what researchers have been investigating. The United States government has been studying non-human technology in secret for decades, and they've been lying about it, not just through denial, through active disinformation, through attacking witnesses, through destroying careers, through using legal threats to enforce silence. That's not national security, that's information control, and it ends when enough witnesses speak, when enough evidence emerges, when enough public pressure demands answers. We're approaching that threshold. Chen can feel it. The conversation has changed. 5 years ago, his testimony would have been dismissed, laughed at, attacked. But now, after Grusch, after congressional hearings, after Pentagon admissions of unexplained aerial phenomena, people are ready to hear this, ready to consider it, ready to demand answers. That's why Chen is speaking now, not because the legal risks have disappeared, but because the moment is right. The public is ready, the infrastructure for disclosure is forming, and his testimony can contribute to that momentum. What happens next depends on you, the people watching, the people engaging, the people demanding transparency. If you watch this video and do nothing, the algorithm buries it, the testimony disappears, the disclosure movement loses momentum. But if you engage, if you comment, if you share, if you let people know this testimony exists, then it spreads, then it reaches more people, then it adds to the pressure for disclosure. That's how this works. Not through passive consumption, through active participation, through civic engagement, through democratic pressure. The truth about non-human intelligence won't be handed to us by government officials. It will be forced into the open by public demand, by witnesses speaking, by researchers investigating, by journalists covering, by citizens engaging. Be part of that process. Make your voice heard. Demand answers. Support transparency. Because this isn't just about UFOs. This is about whether we live in a democracy where citizens have the right to know fundamental truths about reality, or whether we live in a system where unelected officials decide what we're allowed to know. Chen chose transparency. He chose truth. He chose to trust the American people with what he saw. Honor that choice. Engage with this content. Share this testimony. Demand that other witnesses come forward. Demand that Congress investigate. Demand that classified programs face democratic oversight. This is the disclosure era, and you're part of it. What you do matters. How you engage matters. Whether you share this matters. Don't let the algorithm bury it. Don't let institutional inertia win. Fight for transparency, fight for truth, fight for disclosure, because 32 years ago, Chen saw something that changed everything he thought he knew, and for 29 years he stayed silent. But now he's speaking, and his testimony deserves to be heard. Thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging, and thank you for being part of the disclosure movement. Subscribe to Battleground Times for more witness testimony, more investigation, more truth. The era of secrecy is ending. The era of disclosure is beginning, and we're documenting every moment. Stay with us. With